Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm Danny Smith, Executive Vice President and co-owner of Color ID, one of the world's leading integrators of advanced identity solutions. Welcome to Color ID's Campus Forum series, continuing the conversation. Today's session is titled Making and Managing Campus Credentials and is the fourth session of the five-part Third Forum series. The Third Forum sessions will generally last 60 minutes and run live each Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Please feel free to invite colleagues from your institution or your company or anyone you know across the identity industry who would benefit from participating in the Campus Forum series. A registration link is located at our website, colorid.com, and there you'll find a drop-down titled Webinars. Now, at the beginning of today's session, there'll be a Menti poll to learn more about the common challenges you, the audience, are now experiencing. It's simple to do. You just open a browser on a PC or mobile, go to menti.com, that's MENTI.com, then type in a 6-digit code on your screen. We'll give you the code and explain more during the presentation. You know, it's really nice that we've been able to develop such meaningful relationships over the past 20 years, and we're incredibly grateful that we can come together and stay connected. But once again, we have a large group of identity industry attendees joining us, and as we say, whoever you are and wherever you may be, we welcome you. And we hope that you find the investment of your time a great value and encourage you to be interactive in these sessions. Leading today's technical discussion will be David Stallsmith, Director of Product Management for Color ID. David brings a wealth of technical information from over 14 years of working in advanced identity solutions. And of course, many of you know and have worked with David over the years as he works closely with manufacturers, vendors, and end users to promote understanding of the complicated products and services that comprise our identification industry. He's contributed to the decision-making process at many universities, healthcare facilities, government agencies, as they have considered acquiring contactless, smart card, mobile ID, and biometric systems. And since 2006, David has presented annually at the NACU conference and has also presented at NACUS's annual and leadership conferences, the European and Canadian Campus Card Users Conference, and full-day identity summits hosted by some of the most prominent universities in North America. Joining David on today's session as moderator is Mark Deegan, Color ID's Corporate Marketing Manager. In addition to managing Color ID's marketing department for the past 16 years, Mark also juggles the duties of account representative for some of our most strategic partners, both customer and corporate. He's also the project manager for Color ID's banking-related customers. Mark and David's technical knowledge concerning identity solutions is a testament to their commitment to our industry and a great example of the value differential Color ID employees bring to our customer and our corporate partner relationships. Now, just a few housekeeping items, we'll get started. We're really encouraging these sessions to be as interactive as possible, so please utilize the question box to submit questions. All questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation during the Q&A period. In addition to asking questions, you'll also have live polls throughout the presentation, so please be sure to participate in those and be as prompt as possible. Please note, Color ID's entire higher education team is listening in on today's session and are available for any questions or follow-up discussions. Just call or shoot your account manager an email. Also, a reminder that everyone who completes the 5-session forum will receive a certificate of completion and a Color ID swag bag filled with some nice items. Color ID can confirm everyone's attendance, so you don't have to do anything regarding that. However, each session requires separate registration, so please make sure you've registered for all the future sessions. Hey, thanks again, everyone, for the privilege of your time and allowing us to come together and stay connected. Now I'm going to turn it over to David and Mark to get started. David?
Thanks a lot, Danny. Really appreciate that introduction and welcome everyone to our session. Let's kick it off right away with a word cloud. Mark, you want to guide this?
Absolutely, Dave. Let's see here. Dave, see if you can share your screen, and then we'll get that going. I see the preview screen on your PowerPoint with the next slide. There we go. All right, we're on it.
Sorry about that.
You know what we're doing, folks. You're in good hands, I promise. We are experts. Okay, so everybody, if you could travel to menti.com, that's MENTI.com, and use the code 425581. Now, when you plug that in, we're going to have a question there. We would love to hear your response to this question. What would you like to change about your card issuance and credential management process. And as we see responses come in, they'll fly up on the board here. So someone wants an upgrade, cloud-based, make it faster, streamline, death to magstripe. Ooh, a little aggressive there, but I have to agree. Integrations, yes, we want our systems to be connected seamlessly. These are some good starting points to what we're going to be talking about today in regards to the card issuance and management process, the whole life cycle. So, Dave, what do you say we kill this and we'll start the presentation? And then, as Danny mentioned, as we have polls throughout the this webinar, I'll be handling those, and appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mark. Title is Making and Managing Credentials. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what is identity management, and I'll tell a story, at least one in that session or part of the session, and then we'll talk about ID software, which in the university group has been IDWorks pretty much everywhere, and then everything else. And then we'll get the web-based software, which should be good news for some of the folks who typed in words in our word cloud. So before we get into this, let's go to a more specific poll now, and not so much about thoughts, but what are you doing, Mark?
All right. So the first question is going to be, what is your primary system for managing credentials? Just select one, and then we'll review these after we get our submissions in here. I'll let this run just for a little bit, and we'll keep this presentation moving along seamlessly. All right. Almost there, and good. All right, I'm going to flip this around. So 57% of you are utilizing a ONECARD system, so that would be the likes of Transact, Seaboard, Atrium, TouchNet, etc. 29% of you are using your physical access security, so that'd be like Linnell Secure. 14% are just using the ID software itself. That would be the fabled IDWorks that's been in existence forever. And then 0 today have utilizing their own house-built system. So that's a good string of different options there. So thank you very much for submitting that.
All right. So identity management wasn't really on Color ID's roadmap. In some of our other markets like government, they talk more about identity and various systems to manage it until about 2013, one of our schools that we'd worked with closely over the years contacted us, and they had a great big spreadsheet of things that they needed to do. And they were using IDWorks, and they had another transaction management system in their dining hall, but it had nothing to do with what they were doing in the card office. They were just using IDWorks. So, and they also had their own house-made, not bread or donuts, but ID management system. And it was quite elaborate. They'd had it for a long time. They called it, I don't know, some sort of, Octopus, that's what they called it. But the developer had retired. And so it was kind of an orphan, really. It was old code, and it was nearing the end of its life, and they knew they had to do something. So they went and they hired a consultant. And the consultant they hired didn't know anything about identity or cards or printing, any of that stuff. And they got in touch with us at Color ID because we were providing a lot of the ID card products to them and supporting them with their printers and their software and stuff. So the consultants talked to us, and we spent quite a lot of time teaching them about what we all know about how to make and manage cards as well as we can. And then they went to an RFP based on what the consultants came up with. And what they needed, what the RFP talked about was they needed everything that IDWorks did not do. And you know this, if you use IDWorks straight up, reporting is kind of limited. You can get some reports out of there, but not a lot. And if you need to look people up by a lot of different kinds of values, and in this case, birth date was a big one, it was hard to get it through IDWorks to look those people up and maybe or maybe not print them a card. Also, it wasn't able in the way that they wanted to connect to a lot of different school systems and move the data, not just connect, but move the data the way they needed. And they also needed to read or they were hoping later they would encode contactless cards, and IDWorks had some limitations on that. So we presented some solutions to them that were ID card production solutions, but we knew at the time that we did not have anything of a true identity management product or service to offer them. And so what they ended up doing at that time, and this is just 6 years ago, by the time they were done with it, they contracted with one of the major OneCard system providers just for identity management. Now remember, they already have another OneCard system managing their dining hall, but they didn't want that and what they had to offer. They wanted this other company. They paid them a lot of money, and they took their OneCard system and they turned it into an identity management system for them. And it took them over a year. They kept IDWorks just because they needed something to use to print cards, and everything went pretty well for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Not very long for the amount of money that they spent. And they contacted us again. They said, well, you know, we're shopping again. That thing we bought and spent a lot of money on, it's kind of broken, and then it hasn't kept up very well over here, and we're not sure what to do. So again, we do what Color ID does, and a lot of people like us, we rolled up our sleeves and we walked in with everybody in the industry that made anything that could help them solve their problems, and they had demo after demo of ID production, ID management, all kinds of stuff. And at the end of it, then they spent about 2 years. I think they just like to go to meetings, but after about 2 years, they re-upped with their provider that they had. So interesting. What this told us is that there's not a lot there for managing identity in the way especially that universities need. And what is this identity management we're talking about? Well, it is the way that a person, because we're talking about people that carry cards or phones now, we're talking about physical identities. From the time they're enrolled or hired, we authorize them, we vet them, we issue them cards or sometimes mobile tokens. Sometimes there's a self-service feature. They used to be kiosks, now it's online. And then their identity data has to be provisioned. I'm working my way around the circle. I'm now at the bottom. Their identity data has to be provisioned in all the different systems on campus that need to know who they are when they present a card or a mobile credential or whatever. And then as they're going through the campus and using their card or credential, you need to keep track. When was the credential made? What was the credential? Was it ever taken away? You know, you need reporting, you need audits. And then at the end of that person's stay on your campus, you need to remove their access, not just the individual systems that have used that, but preferably, we would think, take that credential out of service and make a note of that in a central location so that you have a place you can go and you can say, yes, this person started, they lived, and then at a certain point we removed them. And so that is what we are coming to understand as identity management. And the credential is the identity data, a name, a number, usually not a lot of information, a photo perhaps, that follows that person around and identifies them to all the various systems that they need to get stuff from. Well, sure enough, IDWorks and other ID software products, they just print and encode cards. That's it. And it's only one piece of really identity lifecycle management. So if you broke this out into a diagram, kind of a funny cartoony looking diagram here, up on top, the student information system or identity access management. Some of you have that, I think. The data for all the people in the system flows from there into, in this concept, what would be an identity management layer. And this would include card production, photo upload, self-service, mobile credential provisioning, whatever. But that ID data, number, name, just a few pieces of data, but it's being managed as its own process, and then that identity data is shared for consumption by all these different systems: access control, OneCard system, library print copy, parking, mobile ID, whatever. And you'll notice some of these items on the bottom were answered in the poll at the beginning as your identity management right now. What are you using to manage your credentials? Well, some people are using their access control system. It's not bad. It just, it's a different, it is the way it's being done. We're just suggesting that there's a way that this identity management could be moved up into a layer made just for that purpose. And so, the question that immediately comes up, and when we begin to even talk about this, people look at us and they say, well, whatever you're talking about, is it integrated with our OneCard system? Because everything's tied to our OneCard system. And they've learned to ask that question because their experience involving time, dollars, and pain over the decades of trying to work with products that are not nicely integrated with their current OneCard system. And they've been through SDK development, they've been through scripts, triggers, flags, all the ways of trying to move data around, and the OneCard integrators moving that data for them and manipulating it as it needs to be going into each different system. It has been quite a process for the last 20 years that if things were not integrated, it probably wasn't something that was going to work. Now, what's the model for this physical identity management? It's not just coming out of nowhere. For years, there has been identity and access management, IAM, for digital resources. Now, these are digital identities. Now, I, as a person, when I log into my Microsoft account, I have access to all the Microsoft services, but it's all digital. And my access is a username and password in most cases. Perhaps there's a second factor somewhere, but really, I'm not going through a door with, that identity is not related to what I do physically. It's related to what I do in the digital world. So it's not bound to a person, which means it feels different. It's not that it isn't data that shouldn't be managed. Of course it should be, and the budgets for this stuff is significant. But there is a difference, and IT people understand how important identity management is for digital resources, but when they get to the physical identity, they don't think about that so much. That's not the world of IT. So if you're looking at this, you're saying, okay, we have a OneCard system, and it's connected to lots of things, but the OneCard system really at its core is a transaction, a financial transaction management system, and they spend an enormous amount of effort keeping that current and working well, because you're moving a lot of money with those cards and phones, and it needs to be done well. People need to be able to put money into those accounts, and they need to be able to be accessed for whatever services or products you need access for. So when you get beyond that, then what are we looking at? Well, there are a lot of solutions now that are beginning to appear in this identity management space, and they sort of, in a way, could live side by side with the OneCard systems and maybe take over some of the function of the OneCard identity management. So looking at a best of breed approach is one approach, and then some of these products are enterprise and some are best of breed type. But Safe, Unify, CARDEXCHANGE, Cloud Suite, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Move and manipulate data across many systems. SWIFTData is very good at that. Photo upload products are CloudCard and MyPhoto, and then real-time reporting. Here are just a few: Tableau, Click, Domo, Splunk, all very good products to help you do the kinds of things that maybe you're not able to fully get from your OneCard system. One of the most important features of identity management, I mean, there are a bunch of important features, but one of them that we don't think about right away is self-service. If you're managing identities, the person who owns the identity also needs to participate in the process. They need to request a new credential for themselves, for a visitor. They need to request a replacement credential. They're the first ones to know they lost it or that something went wrong. They also are the ones who know there are going to be changes. You know, somebody has to alert the system that there's a change. Maybe it's an administrator or a system, but for sure the card holder, the credential holder, knows their role is changing, their location is changing, maybe their name, maybe their photo. So the ability to initiate these changes in the management system by the card holder or credential holder is very helpful, if not essential. And in the world of identity management, getting the data, for example, card data, you know, there's a mag stripe on the card, it has a number on it. There's a chip in the card, it has a number on it. You need to get those numbers to the other systems or get them from systems and then pass them to other systems. So especially that access controlled number that may be pre-programmed in your procs or you know, whatever, iClass, DesFire, CIOS card, and getting that to all the various systems that need it, and then with the proper permissions. This very scary looking diagram here is something like what the University of Nebraska Lincoln is using. It's Grouper is the name of the code, the solution that sits behind this diagram. It's an Internet 2 service, so if your school has access to Internet 2, you have access to Grouper. There's a fee, but I don't think it's prohibitive. It is very powerful, and whenever anybody tells you software is very powerful, you kind of need to make a mental note. Yeah, that means it's probably pretty complicated to use, because the more powerful software is, the more ability you have to make changes, and that means you're looking at complicated stuff. Not always, but often that's the case. So you're looking here at the Grouper diagram of how they're connecting to all these different things on campus and moving essentially identity data and permissions associated with them. They can't, though, in that environment, they're not able to connect directly to their PACS, their physical access control system, so they have to do feeds, data feeds there. So even with all this, they still have to resort to some 20th century methods to move data. In the world of moving and manipulating data and sending it with appropriate permissions and revoking those when necessary, SWIFTDATA has a very innovative service. They install a database on your premises and their application on it, you know, for that database, which they call Pinwheel Data Management Engine, DME. What they have done is they have connected to all these different access control systems. That was their business model, was let's, you know, it's really hard to get data in and out of Linnell or Software House or Persona unless you've integrated with them. So SWIFTDATA went and did those integrations, and now their databases are integrated with those systems. They can get data in and out. For example, we're working with a couple of schools right now that have Secure 9000, and they need to get photos into their PACS, Physical Access Control System, Secure database. And we all know that access control systems they're made for security, and they're kind of hard to get stuff in and out of. So getting a photo, for example, into Secure, if you just drag a bunch of photos into Secure, they will create new accounts. Well, that's not very good if your people are already in Secure and you want to add photos to their accounts. So in this case, Secure doesn't do that natively, but if you've gone through just the work of an integration with Secure, then you can do that. And now you have access to move data in and out through your integration. So SWIFTDATA has done that, and they offer this as a managed service. It's on-prem, but it is managed remotely. So kind of cool. No big interface there. They do the work for you in the background. One of the things that's making credential management a real concern these days is that we're now faced with a lot more credentials of different types. I mean, we had cards with mag stripes, and then we had cards with mag and prox, and then we upgraded some of those cards, and we upgraded some readers. And then we started talking about phones and mobile credentials, and were those going to be Bluetooth or NFC? And then some places added some biometrics. And those are all credentials. Every one of those represent some kind of credential to get you what you need or want. They get you in the dining hall, they get you through a door. And if you're trying to manage all those credentials through the independent systems, you end up with a lot of extra work managing all those different systems just to help your people get what they need, and you know, if nothing else, just keeping them fed. You know, the other thing that is really overlooked a lot on universities these days, campuses these days, are temporary identities. These are visitors. They could be conferences. They could be at some point students will come back in the summers that are not full-time students, but just campers. And especially contractors, they need physical access to doors a lot of times when they come on campus, and they're not in your OneCard system, and oftentimes you don't want to put them there, so you don't really have a way of managing them. And we know a lot of schools that actually set up a totally separate printer on its own software and workstation, not really connected to anything, and they just make cards. Well, that's fine, but that's not management, that's just making. And so there is a place for being able, and there's plenty of software products and solutions out there to help manage temporary identities. And you know, so they're there, but it's another system. But if it were integrated and it could be handled within a single solution, that would actually probably be helpful. And then after you've made these credentials and they're out there in use and everything, like I said earlier, we need to know who, what, when, where, and why identities and credentials were created. All those questions about when they were used, and all those questions about when they were revoked. Now, you may be able to get some of that data from each of the various systems, either that made the credentials or that recognize those credentials. But how do you pull it together? If you're pulling reports out of your access control system, your ID software, your OneCard system will tell you, you're pulling reports from all these different places, and you can use some of those search tools that I showed you earlier to pull it together. But when they're coming from different sources, it just makes reporting a challenge. And if you're not able to produce good reports, you become more vulnerable to some of these new policies that are coming into place, like GDPR. It's from Europe. It's been out there now for going on 3 years. It covers data for European persons, but we all now are working with this. Every time you go to a website, like a weather website, for example, and you have to say, I understand, or I accept your cookies, or whatever, that little notice on every website you go to is there because of GDPR regulations. And the point is, if you don't tell people you have their data, you're using their data, and then remove their data when you're done with it, you are subject to some kind of action by the GDPR. We don't know how or when that might happen, but if it ever did, it's substantial. You know, 4% of your global annual income is your maximum fine. That's a lot. For a university, that would be a lot. Now, is this something we have to worry about? I don't know, but a lot of schools are concerned about these kinds of standards. And speaking about data, Bruce Schneier is a guy I follow. He's a cryptographer that's been writing and consulting for a long time, says some pretty interesting things. a couple years ago, he wrote on his blog post, data is a toxic asset. And he was just saying, with all the data breaches that are happening and they're published, and then they require all this, sometimes they're very expensive, sometimes you have to notify all kinds of people, in your ecosystem that there has been a breach, and that's embarrassing. Data can be a toxic asset, and saving it can be dangerous. So if you're managing it well, you're saving what you need to save and you're getting rid of what you don't need. But if you don't have a good management tool, data tends to stick around, which leads us to this poll.
Thanks, Dave. So the next poll question is, how many active records are in your database? Okay. Thank you, everybody. So 75% are stating 20,000, and then 25% of you are around or over 100,000. Okay. There you go, Dave.
Thanks. That's very good. In some of our earlier sessions, we've had a lot more people at the big end. We've had a couple over 1 million. And those are the ones that you have to say, when you say, why do you keep all that data? And they give the same answer that a old guy that I used to live next door 2 years ago with a garage full of stuff. Well, you just never know when it'll come in handy. And that's, it's a real reason, but given that data is a bit of a risk, maybe it's not a great reason. Let's do another poll right now, Mark.
Well, let's do it. Which system or software do you see when you print your cards? Please select one. Okay, everybody. Thank you. So we got a tie, 38% CBORD and other, and then 25% utilizing the fabled ID Works.
Okay.
Go away, will it, Dave?
Yeah, no, fabled. Yeah, ID Works. Yeah, let's just talk for a minute about ID software. The way it's been forever, you have one workstation and you have one printer, and if you need 3 printers, you have 3 workstations, and just the way it works. It's on-prem. Your software is connected to database, and you print cards. And mostly in the university market, it's been ID Works, and mostly because CBORD and Blackboard, now Transact, recommended, or even more, were integrated with ID Works. CBORD went as far as to make CardLink, which replaced ID Works as their interface. So that question, what do you use to print cards? You could say, well, it's ID Works under the hood, but really it's CBORD is what you're in when you hit print. Transact offered the MyFair encoding plugin years ago for ID Works, but ID Works is 13 years since its last revision. Version 6.5 has been the latest version for a long time. It still works. They've updated it to work in Windows 10. Whoever wrote ID Works was pretty smart, because they wrote some solid software that has lasted a long time. So it was a good choice, and there's a reason it has been popular, but it's also, it has limitations, and it's nearing the end of its life. Other software products that we don't see as often, not in this poll, not at all, ASUREID, EpiSuite, we run into that fairly frequently, and RapidCard IDMS too. They all have strengths, and they've all been around for a while. ID Works is still available. It's still solid. It's still easy to install. It still looks old, and it will end someday, but it has not yet. And there have been rumors of its death, but they have not been true yet. ID Works has live connection to databases, native ODBC. It encodes mag stripes, and it will read contactless smart cards. It doesn't write, really, unless you've done some SDK work or have some kind of special integration. And for that encoding of the chip, you almost always have to have a data card printer. ASUREID, which I think nobody on this call indicated that they're using, but it's from HID, built this back around 09. Again, it's been around for quite a while, but it does look newer than IDWorks. The thing that is still strong about ASUREID that they maintain and keep current is their encoding, reading and coding. So it will do a lot with contactless cards. If you're doing anything with HID cards, ASUREID is a pretty solid solution for you. It's, you know, it's desktop, nothing cloud or web about it, but it does have a strong encoding feature, especially for HID cards and products. CARDEXCHANGE producer has been around for about 15 years. It hasn't been adopted very widely in the university market, but it does have a lot of great features that would suit well universities, and there are a number of them that have realized this in the last few years. Very attractively priced. It has very good card encoding features, both reading and encoding, Prox, MyFair, DesFire. It's not really set up to work with the HID encoding. They haven't done the integrations with HID to be able to do that, but there are workarounds if you need that. They have a network version, which, even though the software is a desktop software, it can be function in a network form. They have a print server and a dispatcher, so you can send jobs over the network to printers not at your workstation, which is pretty cool. And CARDEXCHANGE Cloud Suite is now available, which we'll get to a little later. And then a couple people on this call, if not several, said that they're using their physical access control system to do their badge production or card printing. As I mentioned before, the external database support is kind of limited. Now, if you're starting with your packs and that's the center of your world and all you're doing is printing cards from there and data is getting in or out somehow, you're thinking, oh, well, this is connected, it all works. But if you're working from another system and you're looking at those pack systems from the outside in, it can look a lot more limited. So they're great at managing doors, cameras, all that stuff that they do, but their badging modules are often kind of limited compared to some of the third-party or standalone products that are available. And then while we were talking about encoding, let's just go straight to another poll here. Mark?
Thanks, Dave. So next question is going to be, what does your printer do to your contactless card chips? Alrighty. So it looks like 50% encodes your own data for access control, point of sale. Then we got a two-way tie, 25%, reads pre-programmed numbers, as well as we hope to encode our cards someday. There's some good variation right there.
All right. I'm always surprised that based on these responses to these polls, as we've gone through this a number of times, a lot of people are encoding their own data to their contactless chips. That's pretty cool, and no small feat there. It is a lot of work to get that set up on somebody's part. Now, if you buy a turnkey solution, it's all ready to go. Somebody else did that work and you enjoy it, but either way, getting this stuff to work well and consistently is a challenge. Right here is a little grid of printers and software and chip types, and you will get a copy of this if you get a copy of this either as a recording or the PowerPoint. But I just kind of laid this out there. It's kind of broad. It shows ASUREID with the HID products. CREDENTIAL will encode a lot of different types of cards. The only thing is, if you're doing if you're doing DesFire EV1, the reason to go to DesFire EV1 is because the security of the AES encryption, which CREDENTIAL, at least in the last version, I don't know if their latest does yet or not, did not support that highest encryption type. So just some things to watch out there. Mostly you have to make sure the software and the printer and the encoder and the chip type all align and are supported. So if you're thinking of reading or coding contactless chips in your printer, make sure you ask a lot of questions and do testing. Make sure you get all that right. So now we get to the part of the show where we're away from what was, and we're away from the kind of the theoretical of what is ID management, and we're actually going to talk about what's here right now and what's coming. Web browser, cloud. So true cloud is software which was built to live in the cloud, not just any software sitting on a server somewhere, and then, oh, by the way, we stuffed it in somebody's cloud somewhere. This was actually built in Amazon Web Services, in Azure, in some cloud system that actually has the tools to host and support these kinds of applications, which provide a lot more features than home-built software has in the past. Browser-based simply means that the software runs in a browser. It could be hosted locally, it could be hosted in the cloud. Cloud software can be considered browser-based. Browser-based is not always true cloud, because you might have a web server in your office serving, and the only place you open it on the 4 or 5 computers that are making cards, that's browser-based. But it works. You get to it through a browser. But mostly they should not require client software. I learned today that one of the products I thought was full cloud actually does require some client to sit on the local machine in order to print. Some of the advantages of cloud or web-based software is no local software installer. If you do, it's very little. There's not so much support for IT because it's all somewhere else. It's not on your hardware. You can print from any device because it's browser-based. You don't have to worry about Windows updates, and the printer and the workstation are no longer literally linked by a cable. Some of the disadvantages are that the encoding hardware can be hard to support, if not the printer itself, but generally encoding is a challenge to support from far away through a network. You may need to install and maintain a web server, to get the software out to everybody's browsers. Networks are monitored by university IT, which is often a disadvantage. You're something now on their network. They didn't know you existed before. We've had instances in some cases we've heard that over the weekend the ID software was wiped off all the PCs because this network people didn't know it was there, or didn't want it there. I mean, we hear these kinds of crazy stories. Those were a while ago, but I think they're, anytime you're working with your network people, you want to kind of maintain a low profile or have their full approval with an enterprise type of solution. And then the other thing is browsers are updated frequently, and what worked yesterday in your browser may not work today quite as well. It's kind of weird. So it's not Windows, sometimes it's the browser. So now moving on, what are some of the advantages? Well, we've made cards for a long time in the DMV or the bank teller model. Come up to the window and the card is printed there while you wait. Apple came out with this retail idea of, you don't walk up to a window, you walk in and they meet you and they take your order and you walk out with a bag. You may never have gone near a counter, which is kind of cool. The thing in the card office, the process that most ties you to the DMV or the bank teller model is the camera. So a lot of schools now, and right now there's a real rush to get into third-party or somebody's photo upload system that takes your reliance off of that camera in your card office, especially since nobody's in the card offices right now. So Seaboard has a solution like this. Many universities have built their own. CloudCard is a fully cloud-based, built for the cloud software that is doing very well right now. Transact schools are often using CloudCard without knowing it because it's sold as a Transact solution, but it's also available on its own. And then MyPhoto is primarily on-prem, but also can be cloud hosted. But this being able to upload photos, doing that self-service process is a big time saver, and you don't have to take all that extra, step closer, back up, take off your hat, smile, don't smile, all that stuff is gone. The photo arrives, you approve it. In most cases, you deny a few, they retake it. It's all automated. You just thumb up, thumb down, and move on. And that's a way of incredibly moving along that process. Now, another thing is what can we do with the printers where they're tied to a workstation? One of the products that probably everybody at this point has heard of right now that's newer is called FARGO Connect. And FARGO Connect is a cloud, it's based on a cloud service. It's an HID cloud in Amazon. And the card designer is there, and there is some reporting of a dashboard there. But FARGO Connect requires integration. So there on the left, the Identity Partner Portal and the ID Management System, often a ONECARD provider, but could be others. And then in the bottom, the printing is done from a device called a console. Console is a Linux tablet that up to 6 printers can plug into. It serves as an intelligent network endpoint, and it also has a touch screen. You can use it for print release with a card or a pin, and you can check on the status of the printers that are directly plugged into this. So it takes away the reliance on a PC to be the intelligent endpoint that the printers are connected to, and it takes away kind of that ambiguous space where you have to send communication directly from a server to a printer somewhere else, which is still a little bit unreliable at best, and puts the console in the middle there. So consoles can be put anywhere in the world and plug printers in and get to them through a network and print. Here's on the left is the dashboard that shows you what's going on with all the printers on your FARGO Connect network. And on the right is the FARGO Connect web designer. So like I said, it needs to be integrated. So whatever, if it's your ONECARD system or a card management system, they don't have to build a card designer. That's available from the FARGO Connect portal. But once that card is designed, then you are only looking at the interface of the integrated partner. The other important product for the university market in card production is the successor to IDWorks, which is TrueCredential. And I noticed it looked like nobody here is using TrueCredential at this point. It was built to replace IDWorks 5-6 years ago. They spent quite a bit of time on it. They used a web-based architecture, so it can be in the cloud or it can be on-prem, but you always get to it through a browser. It really works best with data card printers. It has APIs, and it does support smart card reading and some encoding, and it's improving. Every release it gets better. It was kind of a rough start when it first came out. It came out, it went back, and then it came out again. And I think it's, the last I've heard, it's getting pretty solid. But if you talk to people who tried it 2 or 3 years ago, they might be not real thrilled with their experience. Seaboard is wrapping this in their web manager software. So just like they did with IDWorks and CardLink, if you get Seaboard's integrated version of TrueCredential, you're going to have Web Manager open and you're going to search there in Seaboard and then print your cards from there. Transact offers integration of TrueCredential and supports their own encoding of their credentials on the cards, which work with all Transact readers. So it is, that link between these two, Seaboard and Transact, and the ONECARD systems and data card, and now Entrust data card, continues with TrueCredential. So just checking in on that, let's do a poll.
All right, everybody. If you use TrueCredential, how is it working for you? I'd be curious to see if anybody today is utilizing it. And okay, we have a little bit of input. I think that's gonna be it. So flip it around. Works well after we got it set up. So I think that's pretty conducive to what we've heard, right, Dave? I mean, it's a little bit of a process getting it up and running and tweaked to what you need, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Yes, that's what we've heard. Once you get it running and get your printers all set, then it can be solid. Really, again, it depends if it's integrated, standing alone, what you're doing with it. The difference, just very briefly, the difference in the business case between TrueCredential and Fargo Connect. TrueCredential can run standalone or as an integrated solution. Fargo Connect requires, at this point, requires an integration. So they're both adding features and improving. And then that brings us to, we keep at Color ID, we're always looking for ways to help our customers and everybody in the markets that we work with to find better solutions, because the questions come in and we're like, okay, well, maybe we can find something for that. So right now, our best hope for an ID management solution that will fit the university market is CARDEXCHANGE. They've been building for the last couple of years a whole suite of web products, and the controller, if you look at this does not really look like ID card production software, because it's not. It is really a view into a database, and it is fully in the cloud. It sits in Azure, but there's all the information about your people relative to their credentials, who they are and what they can do and what they're connected to. And now in this type of system, you would have this in the cloud, and it would be your ID production database. And you don't have to worry about maintaining that on campus anymore. And it will be connected to all of the other systems that need data from the ID production process. So there's the controller, there's the stand, which provides that self-service feature, because it both runs on mobile devices and browsers, and it also runs in a browser to capture photos and change the status of credentials and other things related to each of the credential holders. So it provides the self-service function. It also has Press, which is its own update of CARDEXCHANGE software, the producer, the desktop software, but also CARDEXCHANGE has now integrated, is in the process of integrating with Fargo Connect. So what we saw about Fargo Connect a little while ago, and how it could be integrated by Seaboard or Atrium or Secure or some of the access control systems, CARDEXCHANGE is also in the process of including Fargo Connect in its offering. So when it's time to print, you would be looking at the controller, and when you hit print, it would go to the Fargo Connect card production process. Also, because all of the data, everything that happens around the credential, when it was made, when it was changed, when it was released, is in that database in the sky, then you can do reports from there. And here's the how to create a report. All of these are fields in your database. You can drop down what you need in any of those different areas, and then run the report, and you will effectively have your own report. You decided what you needed, and then you ran your own report because you have the database. It's your database to control. So we're excited about this product. We've talked in the past about HID Safe, an enterprise version of this kind of identity management. We've talked about other things, other types of products, and right now CARDEXCHANGE is working hard to create this identity management solution, and we're pleased to be working with them and talking with them about it, and also to be able to bring it to our various markets to help them solve some of their problems. So this is, Color ID, Mark and I have been working on a diagram. Actually, several of us at Color ID have been working on this, because it's kind of a new concept. What are we talking about? Is it just a whole bunch of applications stuck together, and then a bunch of cloud talking to each other like thunder in the summer night sky, or is there actually some kind of efficiency that's going to come out of all that make our lives better and our processes quicker and more effective? So what I think this diagram might help us here. On the left is the admin, the person who is managing the credential process, and you log into your computer, and you can look at the identity management layer, which, in using what we just talked about, could be the CARDEXCHANGE controller, would be the brownish kind of what sand-colored cloud there. And so you are looking at that cloud. That's where all the data resides. That data comes from the student information system, and it's pulled into the identity management layer. From there, using the admin feature, you're able to direct what happens to that data. Some of that data may go to the mobile credential portal if you're trying to issue mobile credentials from Allegiant or HID or SafeTrust, any of these various products. This could be a management portal for that kind of access to these cloud products, so that you're not having to log directly into the mobile credential portal itself. Your admin layer is doing that for you. Also, when it's time to print a badge, the number 7, that gray cloud there, would be, in this case, could be the FARGO Connect cloud, which sends the data to the FARGO Connect consoles to print, which could be on the printer 10 feet away from you in the office, or it could be on a printer on the other side of the country. So all of this is, the attractive thing here is that it's being managed from the admin screen on the left and the identity management layer solution that's then managing this. And then once the data, if you have data coming back from the cards, access control data back into the ID management system, and then that could go down to the PACS, to the access control system number 9. Some of that will go to the ONECARD system number 8, because it needs to know the card numbers to open door or grant meal plans and all that stuff. Student information, of course, will need to know some of this data coming back from the card. And then over on the right, once those credentials have been provisioned at the mobile credential provider, then those mobile credentials will be sent over the air to various phones. So we're imagining an ecosystem where the administrator is not in touch, they're only secondarily in touch with 3 to 10 other systems through the identity management solution. And so we're excited about this. It's not just a diagram, there are real products starting to fill in here. Some have been here for a while, some are just arriving, but we believe that this is something that a lot of folks in the higher education market will be excited about, and other markets too. Healthcare, we could see use for this in government, and corporations are using things like this now, and I think this might be an alternative to some of the high-priced enterprise solutions they're using too. So having said that, that is Color ID's approach to identity management and making credentials. Are there any questions? Turn it back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Dave. We had a couple come in, so let me see here if I can pull them up. Okay. This is an interesting one. Regarding HID's FARGO Connect, can I bring my own console and load the HID FARGO Connect software onto it? Sounds like they don't. They're asking if, do they have to buy the console and all that stuff, or can they just maybe bring their own tablet, I'm guessing?
Well, it's not designed that way. The console, it's not just a tablet. It has up to it has a USB port on it. I mean, the way it's being offered by HID right now is the software is loaded on the console. It's a great question, really. The software is not being sold separately. It's only being sold on the hardware. Now, if we pressed HID and if there was a good business case for it, they might do that. But by putting their software on that tablet, they're choosing the tablet and any of its unique foibles. So it's tested, it works. They know the software and the hardware are compatible in every way, and there is hardware involved. So I would guess HID would be reluctant to sell the software separately. As of right now, it's not an option.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's a question. Looks like a global campus. Which ID software would be best for our school that has satellite campuses around the world?
Well, you need a network connection. I mean, you could use any of the integrated software solutions with FARGO Connect, for example, if you use Seaboard or Secure's integrated that, or CARDEXCHANGE controller, and then you have FARGO Connect, you have those consoles anywhere in the world on networks, that would work. DataCard's TrueCredential would claim to do that, but I don't know. Haven't heard a lot of stories about people using TrueCredential over very large WANs. It might work that way, and so I would say at this point, FARGO Connect in an integrated form, which of course is the way it has to exist, is probably your best bet there. Otherwise, if CARDEXCHANGE Cloud could support. You could also do CARDEXCHANGE Cloud controller and producer, because once you have that data in the cloud, it can be seen from anywhere. And then if you really wanted to get into a lot of complicated access control integrations, maybe HID Safe would also have that capability.
Okay. Has CARDEXCHANGE Cloud been integrated with Seaboard and Atrium yet?
No, but the integration, and we talked about integration a little while ago, being one of those very painful things, and that's because even just to set up file transfers in and out of those used to be pretty challenging, because you would have to get it from the ONECARD provider. But now a lot of the systems have APIs, and it doesn't put so much burden on either party to provide all the work. So like the controller, for example, the CARDEXCHANGE controller could send data to Seaboard, and it could be as simple as a file, it could be a CSV file, or it could be an API connection to Seaboard if they expose that. There are just so many different ways of connecting data now and moving data around, that what used to be really painful and difficult should be becoming a lot more free and possible.
Cool. Okay, last one. This one is a little cryptic, but how is using CARDEXCHANGE Cloud with FARGO Connect different than using another ID software for printing?
Well, so if you're using a desktop software, you load it on your desktop and you open that software application program, that's what you're looking at, and do all your work there. It's connected to databases, whatever. When you hit print, you're still in that software, and it is that software that's generating the print job through the Windows drivers or whatever, Mac, whatever. In CARDEXCHANGE Cloud, you're managing it as a database access to the CARDEXCHANGE Cloud product, and you're creating your request for a print job in the controller, and then that is being sent to the production utility, which could be FARGO Connect, or it could be CARDEXCHANGE Producer, the integrated solution to print from controller. So in the one case, it's everything right on your computer. In the other case, it follows the model of the integrated solutions, just like if you're in Seaboard in CardLink and you send a job, it pulls the template from IDWorks, but really it's the Seaboard database that you're dealing with in CardLink. Same thing with the controller. You have your ID production database, it creates the print job from there, and then it goes out through the print utilities.
Perfect. Okay. That was the last one, last question for today. Great questions, everyone. I really appreciate you guys all participating. Please don't miss out on our next webinar. That's this Thursday, titled Going Mobile for Under 1 Million. It's May 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Reminder that each of our webinars do require its own registration, so don't forget that. So with that being said, on behalf of Danny, David, and myself, be safe out there, and thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. Goodbye.